because it is a skill. It's not something that you're just going to be like, well, I'm mindful now and I'm just good at it. Or, a lot of people say they're bad at it. They can't meditate or whatever because you haven't developed a skill yet.
Welcome back to the Illuminated Path. This is episode 79. What are we talking about today?
We're talking all about mindfulness today. Actually, this is going to be a part 1 of 2 episodes going over this, and different attitudes is what I'm calling it, of mindfulness. So we will get into what that all means.
Yep. How's the week?
Good. I'm just about 24 weeks pregnant now. And the baby is moving so much. It wasn't really something I was feeling a lot when we recorded the last few episodes, and now it's like a everyday, multiple times a day sensation.
Yeah.
So cool, so weird.
And I finally felt it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'll just be able to feel it even more. So, yeah. Our midwife came today and we got to hear the heartbeat. So all is good.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm over the moon. Trading's going well. And, I think you and I have had a lot of conversations lately about just how grateful we are that that's an option and that we designed this. And I went through a lot, finding different strategies and doing things, and had multiple periods where I wasn't trading just because my model wasn't showing in the market. And those were tough times. And we ultimately decided the best approach is have multiple strategies. So we're doing well now.
Yeah.
Very exciting time.
Very.
But I'm grateful for us to, start our family and have that freedom and really truly just have our days be about being together.
Me too.
So let's get started.
So I'm reading a book called Mindful Birthing by Nancy Bardacke. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. So a lot of this information comes from that book, and it's being applied to labor and delivery, as well as, just taking care of a newborn in general. But all of these things that we're going to talk about regarding mindfulness can be applied to everything, and just living a more mindful life, practicing mindfulness, and how that can just really help you in life. So I wanted to first just mention, like, what does mindfulness actually mean? People talk about it all the time, but the basic, I guess, definition of it is really it's the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose, being in the present moment, and non-judgmentally.
Yeah.
So it's really about like being very present.
Yeah. I think, we've talked about this in the past, but I think like moments where I've really and truly appreciated the moment, I was extremely present. And I think the second you kind of catch yourself in like, how do I make this moment better? If it's already good and you're trying to make it better, or, it's not great and you're like, I got to change this. I think you leave the present moment and like truly living. You're living either in hypotheticals or what you want or the future. I think it's a remarkable skill to be present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then just wanted to kind of share the opposite of this would be mindlessness. And that's when we're on autopilot. That's when we're kind of just sleeping through life and not present with the experiences you're having. That's when you're driving on the road and you're like, whoa, how did I get here? I don't even remember the car ride because your mind was somewhere else and you're not actually present. This is something that everyone struggles with. I mean, even as we do our best to be more present, this is something we often experience as well, in like the simple everyday tasks where like I can think of a million different things, but you go upstairs to do something, you put something down, and then 10 minutes later you forgot that that's something you were going to go back to. That is rushing to one thing and not really being present with like the current thing you're doing. And so there's a lot we can do to continue to like practice that skill because it is a skill. It's not something that you're just going to be like, well, I'm mindful now and I'm just
Yeah.
good at it. Or, a lot of people say they're bad at it. They can't meditate or whatever because you haven't developed a skill yet.
I think that's huge too. Like, I think mindfulness certainly comes in the conversation of meditation, and that's not really a rabbit hole we're going down today, but it's a skill that you practice at. Like when people say I'm not good at it, that's the point. You haven't practiced.
Hmm.
So I think it's just kind of take that perspective into this conversation because meditating is something that you practice at, and it's an awareness that you're possessing that you take into your day. And obviously you're not good at it if you haven't tried to do it or
Right.
practiced it. So,
Yeah. So these are, we're going to split this into two parts. So right now we're going to go into four different attitudes of mindfulness. And these are just like things to practice, to be aware of. Um, we'll get into them and it'll make more sense. So the first one is called beginner's mind. So that is when you are kind of taking on a beginner's mind and you're allowing yourself to have a beginner's mind, meaning you're really being open. You're willing to see things as a new and a fresh experience, and you're not taking in all of the old stuff that you think you already know, and you're just allowing like, okay, like I'm open.
yeah.
It's letting go of past experiences and again, like all of those previous like thoughts and beliefs that you might have about something. So maybe you're trying something new, a new hobby, and you have like these beliefs about it or something. And you're like, well, so and so said this about it, or my parents told me this about it. Having a beginner's mind is going into it and just like being open and letting go of all of those previous beliefs that you've been told.
Mm,
Um, Having a beginner's mind can also be having a lot of curiosity. So when you're curious about things, it can really help to remove like fears that you might be having, or even removing like negativity, like bad thoughts about something. So when you allow yourself to just be curious, you're being more open again and you're just like, like I wonder about this or I'm curious about that. And it allows you to again just take in new information without judging it.
I think that one's really important too, because we've talked a lot about curiosity and, like being a kid and trying new things. And we've had that conversation of people who say, like, oh, I don't have a hobby. And it's like, well, what are you trying? So I think it really is about giving yourself the opportunity to try new things, but it's really important to stay curious and um, be open to possibilities rather than limitations.
Yeah. Another part of this beginner's mind is having in the book what they call a don't know mind. So it's again like really understanding that the present moment is the only thing that can be known. So our minds often go off and they race and they think about other things. And actually, one of the examples that they gave in the book was they were actually practicing a meditation, and the person kept saying, gosh, like, how long is this going to last? And they
Mm,
kept going back to well, I don't know. And then being okay with I don't know being the answer. I don't
yeah.
know. Like, it's okay. I'm just going to come back to the present. I don't need to know that answer right now. We always want to be in control. We always want to know the answer to something. And it's so much better if you can just be open and like allow things to unfold as they're going to.
Yeah. And I think there's a level of crossover with this, with, kind of things I've talked about of being an eternal student, like always having that mentality of, I'm willing to learn new things, I'm willing to try new things, and just kind of having that open mind and curiosity about new things. So I think that plays a big role here in terms of just being present and being okay with where you are.
Yeah. Anything else on that one?
No.
Okay. Non-judging is the next one. And this is a really big one because all of us judge and we do it so quickly and without even like realizing that we do it. It's like a really natural reaction that we have. We judge people, we judge our own thoughts, we judge things. Like we're always just like coming up with something that how we feel or think about it.
Mm.
And it's really important to kind of let that go and not be judging. So oftentimes like our thoughts are just these reactions of the experience that we're having in the moment, and we're quick to be like, ooh, this is good or bad. This is pleasurable or painful, or I like this or I don't like this. And you're immediately like putting a label on it.
Mm.
And
Well,
yeah,
I think that's important too, because a lot of, what you learned and taught me too was things are neutral. It's our filter that is deciding something is good or bad.
right,
So I think, yeah, when you really take a step back and see how you go through the day and things happen and you say, that's a good situation, that's a bad situation, you know, take a step back and maybe approach things more as if they're neutral and they don't have to be good or bad.
right.
Two other things I'll add to that. Number one, I grew up with a dad who loved people watching. As I got older, I realized people watching was just judging people.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of knowing that now, right, it puts things in a different perspective. But I think that when you are judging, I think you sent me something about this, is when you judge and you're quick to judge, it's actually your insecurity coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's something that has really helped me reshape a lot of things that I judge. Of I judge something and then I go, okay, well, what am I insecure about here?
Mm-hmm. Like, why
And
am I like even thinking about it in this
right,
way? Or,
why am I saying this? What am I feeling about this or about this thing that I'm judging? So
mhm.
I think that's something to carry into your day.
Yeah. And we were just talking a lot about judging others, but judging yourself. We are so quick to judge ourselves, and we're really mean to ourselves. Our
Yeah.
judgments are oftentimes pretty negative towards ourselves. And that's another thing like that's really, can be tied into like meditating and the idea that we can recognize that these are just thoughts that are passing.
Yeah.
In the book, they compare them to like, just watching clouds pass in the sky. They're thoughts. And you can't necessarily stop the thoughts from coming up in your mind. The more you kind of practice, I feel like you'll have less and less of those negative judgmental thoughts. But just because you have the thought doesn't mean it's a true thought. Doesn't mean you need to believe in it and be like, yeah, I'm really bad at this thing, and now I just think that way, and now every action you take is based on you thinking that way. So it's really, really important to remember that not all of these thoughts are true, and you are not the thoughts that you have.
That reminds me a lot about when I was on medication and my brain would just race. And I mean, at that point, I was so like warped and twisted in terms of like just my thinking and stuff that was going on. And something that everyone does that I think like isn't really talked about enough is we create these hypotheticals in our head of like, I don't know, so and so did this to me and this person didn't actually do this, but you create hypotheticals in your head and then you run with them as if they already happened.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just think that's something to keep in mind in terms of staying present and not judging others, but, taking that into your day of like really being able to observe your thoughts and understand, is this something that happened or is it something I'm creating?
Right. Is it a fact, or am I just like completely making these like wild assumptions?
Right. So again, not every thought you have is true.
Yeah. Patience, having patience, practicing patience. Um, Again, this is one that takes practice. I used to literally say, like, I'm not a patient person.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if I'm deciding that, yeah, no kidding, I'm not going to be a patient person.
Right.
But having patience is about understanding that events are going to unfold at their own pace, and it's not necessarily going to be on a timetable of our choosing.
I mean, what's the whole thing with manifestation? You can pick the
Destination,
you can pick the destination, you can pick the outcome, you can't pick the timeline.
right? Or even necessarily the route to get there.
Well, definitely not the route to get there.
Yeah, like and this all again like stems to like really wanting to have control and be in control and knowing the future.
Right.
And that is again the very opposite of being mindful and staying present. If
Right.
you're just
Yeah.
so worried about the future and you're just like, okay, well, I'm here, but what about this, and this, and this in the future? You're not being mindful.
Well,
We want to have this certain schedule, we want to have this control, but
I mean, look at when we were working on the marketing agency and doing consulting, like we were so focused. We got so focused on the consulting work and like building that more, getting more clients and doing that. And I think if we stayed in that cycle, it was going to be so much about the money, but it was like we were kind of missing the things that were happening on the way. You know, your uncle drag races. And we went out there, we put our logo on his dragster, like we go to the races. That was a beautiful, cool experience that I think if we were not really in it, if we were like really focused on the money and growing it and not being patient and trying to just force it and get new clients and do the whole thing, we would have been like, oh, we don't have time for that. Can't do all this. So I think that the patience kind of helps being present in a sense,
yeah,
I think is what I'm trying to say. Like if you're open, you've got that curiosity and you are present, having that patience to do the new experiences and to reach your destination and know that that's where you're heading opens you up for really beautiful experiences along the way.
yeah, I was just gonna say like everything you were just laying out. It's like enjoying the full journey on the way,
Yeah.
knowing that you have like an end destination in mind, maybe, but you're patient in getting there and you're allowing yourself to have the full experiences that end up leading up to whatever that is.
Yeah. And I see you put a note in here. Urgency to get somewhere other than where we are creates unhappiness. So I,
Hmm.
I think that's something that's huge because a lot of people, right? It's this discussion of like, I'm focused on the destination. In reality, there is no destination. The only thing you have is the journey. So if you're focused on the destination, you're looking to the future, you're not present, you're looking forward, and you're missing the journey.
Hmm.
So I think that, again, like all of these things work together. But if you really are only focused on the destination and what you get out of it and the outcome, you're going to miss a lot of life
Yeah.
on the way.
Yeah. I also had just a couple other notes. Like, we live in a time where we expect immediate results.
Yep.
That's just not reality. And that is unfortunate because that just has to do with like how we've developed as a society that is so like stressed
Mm.
and focused on hustling. And we just expect these immediate results. And like, that's not reality.
Yeah. But I
Um,
mean, it certainly is societal, right? Like, you go on Amazon, you buy something, it's usually there in a day or two. We are so ingrained and programmed for immediate gratification that doing something big that requires time and patience, a lot of people don't see through.
right. Yeah. So it's really just being okay with where things are and allowing things to unfold in their own time and just like trusting the process and being patient in that.
Yeah.
Last one for this episode is non-striving. So this one I found kind of interesting. Um, and what it's saying, what was kind of explained in the book is that striving is like a component of trying or like giving effort to get somewhere. And now it's not saying like don't try to achieve something or try to, start working towards these goals or whatever. But in mindfulness, we kind of allow ourselves to believe, well, there's nothing that we need to achieve. There's nothing we need to get. There's nowhere we need to go. Again, it's about being patient. It's about being present. It's about just doing the things that you need to do that make you feel good, that allow you to know, I am on this journey. I'm taking the steps and I'm building confidence in that. And it's not like, oh, this is just such hard work. And I'm just like, go, go, go. And so it's like they all tie together, and it's about being present and just, yeah, like reaching towards that, but not in a way that feels like this intense effort.
I like that a lot because I'm a big believer too in like the way that things unfold is the way that they're meant to. I think in a lot of contexts, it's really that discussion again of like you're exactly where you need to be.
Hmm.
You know, whatever you're going through and experiencing, there's a lesson there. And the philosophy and higher consciousness is you're going to continue to get that lesson until you learn it.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that that's really important to take into your day to day because I think every difficult moment I've had, every difficult situation and time, and I think more recently, right, some like really intense stuff with trading of like, it's not working, I got to pivot. Every time I had those moments, it was a major learning opportunity to look at what do I need to move forward better
Hmm.
and stronger. And I think being able to do that and see that, especially, as we ran our businesses and consulting and many of the things we've done, we've been able to come back stronger from that.
Yeah, it's hard to like think of it that way in the moment, because that's where it might be painful, and that's where you might really be stressed.
Yeah.
And but like this is really saying, you have to really just be aware of where you are, even if there is pain and you don't like it. It's saying, okay, but like this is my reality right now, and accepting that. And don't like resist the truth of what is currently happening.
Yeah.
You have to just really be there and know that that's, I guess, part of like the journey.
I mean, I believe wholeheartedly like it happens for you, not to you.
Hmm.
And so I think when there's difficult moments, it's a skill to be able to ask yourself, like, what can I learn? What what is the next step in my journey? What can I learn to make this get through this, to do something better, to succeed in the way that I want to? But being comfortable in the learning,
Hmm.
there were a lot of times in trading where like I almost passed a evaluation and then I failed the account and it was like, okay, well, what did I learn? How can I do better? And in that moment, appreciating that I'm not where I thought I was.
Hmm.
And I have this opportunity now to be better and move forward and not do this again. Remember what this moment feels like and, figure out how you avoid getting back here. So I think being comfortable in the uncomfortable, that's where you learn. That's where your greatest wins come from.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also like, you have this idea in your mind, like plan A is going to work. And
Yeah.
if not plan A, plan B. Well, guess what? Like it might be plan Z by the time you get to the one that is getting you to that exact thing that you were hoping for. Don't count the plans. It
Mm.
doesn't matter. Like those were all meant to be there along the way for some reason or another that you may not understand, but um it just doesn't matter. Like those aren't the important part of it. That's just part of the journey.
And so that reminded me of something, and this is the last thing I'm going to share, but it's a little off topic,
Okay.
but I think this is huge. Tony Robbins has talked about this, but when you have like someone who quit alcohol or, is an addict or was an addict, right? We say, oh, you have this disease, you know, you can't be around it or whatever, right? And they start counting the days. Oh, it's been 50 days, it's been 70 days. That mentality is a huge problem. And
Yeah.
Tony Robbins talks about this. He says, why are you counting the days? Because when you count the days, it's a version of you that is still thinking about it
Right.
versus just saying, I don't do that anymore. Because that new identity accepts that as its truth.
Right. You're not thinking about it every single day.
Right. And looking back and counting, oh, it's 21 days, 22 days, 23 days. Because you're creating this situation in which you're still that person just resisting
Mm.
versus being a new person who doesn't have that desire.
Mhm.
And this is all neuroplasticity and gets into, the conversation of disease and addiction. But I think my point is just you can really change a lot by your perspective and how you think about the situation and your choice and approach and also your beliefs about yourself and your capacity to achieve that. I would just reiterate, like, it doesn't matter how many plans you go through. What matters is if you're still passionate about the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was everything.
That's
Baby
what I
is
got.
moving right now, so I feel funny. Yeah. Check back next week to listen to part 2 of this conversation.
And these come from where again?
The book Mindful Birthing by Nancy Bardacke.
All
Hopefully I'm
right.
pronouncing that right.
Sorry if we butchered your name. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.